Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, I will go ahead and call this meeting of Manitou Springs City Council to order for April 21st. We will begin with Pledge of Allegiance. We will all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you all be respectful and just as solemn as we would be in council chambers. Okay, Judy, if you would display the American flag.
Yep, I'm just need to do my share screen.
If you'll join me, I pledge allegiance to the
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which
it
it stands,
stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
for all.
Thank you. Okay, would the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Counselors Judith Chandler,
Present.
John Chada,
Here.
Julie Wolf,
Here.
Susan Walbrook,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune,
Present.
and Mayor John Graham.
Present, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. First item of business is to approve the agenda. I think you all have a copy of the agenda.
I'd like to
Entertain a
remove number 1 from the consent calendar, please.
Okay. All right, so that would be item E1, approval of the March 17th regular meeting minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so motion to remove that. Do we have a second?
There's no motions for these things. You just take it off unilaterally.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. So you can just have any council member can pull any item they want, and then you can
Okay.
just discuss it afterwards. Save you some time.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, consent calendar is approved. Next item then would be
I'm
item,
sorry. I have a quick question on the consent calendar, if that's where we are.
yeah,
Okay, so on the item F2, the approval of the April 7th meeting minutes, I was reviewing those, and at that meeting, we had voted to pull the March 3rd meeting minutes. And I am, maybe I'm addressing this to Judy Morgan. Did we ever approve those minutes of that meeting? Because I don't think we did.
No, so they were pulled and asked to be brought back with the changes. So
Okay, and we have not brought those back yet.
the May 3rd or the
March 3rd. So on the
March
F,
3rd. So the March 3rd minutes are not on the consent agenda. They are coming up on another agenda.
okay, that's,
This one.
thanks, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
And Mayor, if I can just
Yes.
your attention to the agenda. Right now,
yes,
we skipped over approval of
I'm
agenda and
I'm-
public comment.
I'm sorry, my bad. That's my mistake. You're right. I noticed that now. So we should actually go back and take public comment and non-agenda items. So we'll ask the city clerk if we have any members of the public for comments.
So
Do we?
did have somebody ask, let me find her on the, and she did not indicate if this was where she wanted to speak, but let me see if I can find her. Hang on. And we do have, oh, here we go. Okay. So this was from Rebecca Ratteri.
Battery, yes.
Battery. Okay, sorry about that. So I've moved you over to where you're able to speak now. So is this,
Okay.
wanted to have your public comment?
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
would first say, before we get started with public comments, since we do have at least one person who wants to speak. Typically, we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Basically, if you would give us your name and address, and again, this has to be an item that's not on the agenda for tonight. So with that, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Rattery. I live at 108 Fairview, and I'm also the owner of one of the owners of the Iron Spring Chateau. Now I'd like to address the City Council on behalf of my business. As you know, we're a tourist attraction and rely on the foot traffic generated by those visiting the Pikes Peak region to enjoy its many attractions. Due to the effects of the coronavirus, we are projecting a year that will generate a loss of revenue at 50 to 75% in our primary function of our dinner and shows. Tourists will not be traveling this year as much as usual, forcing a business like ours to focus on locals for our revenue this year. While we so very much appreciate the movement to help out local small businesses, we recognize that a city the size of Manitou with its 5,000 citizens cannot possibly support our business to the extent that it would need to cover our expenses, no matter how much we streamline them. We're currently showing a loss of 30% in the 6 weeks that we've been closed. The closure of our business right at spring break has incurred a $15,000 debt burden in the 6 weeks. And all of our group reservations that we had scheduled for this summer for dinner and show have officially canceled. The fact we've applied for both the EIDL and the PPP, and while the government stimulus package is wonderful, the fact is we've seen no movement on our application to date, and in all practicality cannot rely on the federal, state, or local governments to bail us out of this situation. In light of the current status of our business, we have determined that our secondary function of hyper parking is the only effort that will save our business this year. We would like to formally request and respectfully request the City of Manitou Springs to set a date for the reopening of the incline in order to attract that foot traffic that our business needs so very badly. While I ask on behalf of my business alone, I believe that all businesses in Manitou would benefit from reopening of the incline, as hikers often stop in town to buy t-shirts, pick up food, or have a drink. We recognize your concern for the people of Manitou's health and safety, but would like to remind you that we as a business located in your town deserve the same kind of attention and protection. Surely we can find a way to balance the safety of our residents without decimating the businesses in our district. As all businesses who are experiencing the phased reopen, we will follow all guidance by the Department of Health and the City of Manitou sets forth to prevent any further spread of the virus.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have anyone else?
Nope, we have no more hands raised.
Okay, very good. Then that will end the public comment on non-agenda items portion. Okay, so now we're at the consent calendar. Again, my apologies for jumping ahead there. So it sounds like we have the consent calendar. There's favor to approve it with the removal of the first item. That is the March 17th regular meeting minutes. Again, and you said we don't need a motion, I think, Mr. Parker. Okay, great, okay. So consent calendar is approved. Next item then would be the approval of the March 17th regular meeting minutes.
Mayor, I guess I'm
Yes.
confused. We do need a motion on the approval of the consent agenda.
We do.
What
Okay.
Jeff Parker was suggesting was that you don't need a motion to remove an item.
Oh, okay, my bad. All right, so consent calendar.
I move that we approve the consent calendar for April 21st, 2020, item F1.
Judith, you're a little garbled there. Could you repeat that, please?
Oh, okay. So I move that we approve the consent calendar for April 21st, 2020 with the removal of item F1.
Okay, thank you. So we have motion. Susan Wilbert, we have a second. We motion a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, show of hands. Aye. Okay, let's see. I can't see Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. Could you respond?
Her hand is raised, Mayor.
Okay, all right. So I'm sorry, I can't see.
All
Okay,
hands
so
went up.
all hands went. Okay, so that's passed unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Actually, oh, there you are. Never mind, I'm sorry. I thought you were
Okay,
one of our council members, but
I'm sorry. Someday we'll all be in the same room together, and this will be a little easier. Okay. So next item then would be the March 17th regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion? Yeah, okay. Councilor Wolf?
I just wanted to suggest corrections, two corrections. which are found on page 8 and 14 respectively. So page 8, there's a paragraph let's see, I have to find it now that I'm on the wrong thing. Hold on. Jeez. Okay, first full paragraph is just one long sentence. The very last line says, make a stand yet. Make as in M as in mother. It should say take, T as in Tom. It's just a typo.
Is that, what's the page number on the actual minutes, if you don't mind?
8 of 14. Page 8.
Okay, I'm looking at it, and this is the first paragraph?
It's the first full paragraph. The first,
Oh,
at the top
got
of the page, it starts with the word open, which is in the middle of the previous paragraph. So it's the one after that that starts off with Counselor Wolf, and the whole paragraph is just one long sentence. It's the fourth to last word should be take, not make. That's all. It's just a minor thing. And then the other thing is page 14. The very last sentence is an incomplete sentence. The last sentence says, City Attorney Parker will put together something on Counselor Wolf's question regarding, and then the next line says adjourn.
Okay,
Oh, I missed that.
I'll make that correction. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay.
Do I have to move to correct those things, or did they just get corrected?
I believe you have to move to correct those.
I moved to correct those things.
Want a motion?
So are we moving to accept the minutes of this, of the 17th with the 2 corrections?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I should have said.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Do we have a second then?
I'll second it. Okay, if that's her motion. Okay,
Okay,
second.
that's great. Motion second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. Show of hands. City Clerk, how's the vote go?
I see all hands up.
Okay, passes unanimously. Great, thank you. Okay, next item, second reading and public hearing on ordinance number 0620, vacating a portion of Tulsa Road. Since this is a public hearing, we would typically begin with a staff report. I'm not sure that that's necessary.
Let me go ahead and get the staff in attendance over onto this, into the panelist section.
Okay,
And I am going to ask Michelle as well as Christine, although my understanding is Michelle is going to be the primary on this.
okay. And do we have any members of the public who wish to speak to this? Do we know?
No hands at this time.
Okay,
Let me just make sure everybody has the abilities to get their video and their audio going.
okay. As I recall, 2 weeks. Sorry, someone speak?
That was
It's Michelle. I said hello. It's Michelle.
Okay. As I recall, 2 weeks ago, there wasn't much controversy on this. We don't, apparently we don't have anyone from the public who wants to speak to it. I could recommend that we have an abbreviated version of the staff report, unless any member of the council would like to have the full-blown report. I would suggest we just take a fairly brief report. Okay, Miss Michelle, you have the floor. You can be pretty brief, I think, on this.
No problem with that. I'm mainly just here to answer if anybody had any questions or if there was any public comment. It's a request for vacation of an area of Tulsa Road that is in private usage, and it has been for many years. It's basically just to get the private improvements on private property. It was endorsed by Public Services, and associated with that, we will also get a small area where the road encroaches onto the private property. That'll be deeded over to the city, and we'll also get a drainage easement for public drainage improvements that are already in place. Was recommended unanimously by Planning Commission, and I'm more than happy to try to answer questions or address any issues that council might have.
Okay. Council, do we have any questions for Ms. Anthony? Councilor Wolf.
Thank you. Hi. How you doing, Michelle?
Good. How about you?
Good. I just have a quick question. Did you actually draft the memo that's in our packet that says that it was drafted by you? Did you draft that?
Yes.
Dated today? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. That's all I
Welcome.
have.
That's all. Any additional questions for Ms. Anthony? Okay. Is the applicant present?
Michelle,
Yeah, Michelle, yeah.
I don't know.
what's the applicant's name?
Jason Yester is the owner, and his contractor is David Coons.
Okay, I'm not.
I know
not
Jason's
required-
been sick, so I
They're
don't know.
not
whether
required to appear, are they?
It usually is only an issue if there are questions that staff can't answer.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure if they were here that they had a chance to be heard.
I don't see their names listed.
If they raise their hand, if they're in the audience and they raise their hand, that would be a way to identify them if they're here.
Right, right.
There are no
I don't-
hands gone up.
I don't see any hands raised out there. Okay, so there being no public comment, we'll move on. I don't think we really need to, unless we have questions for Ms. Anthony, I think we could probably move to deliberation. So I will close the public hearing portion of this, and we can go into deliberation. Would entertain a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 0620 vacating a portion of Tulsa Road.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a second?
Are there conditions and findings that you want to include in that?
That's a good question. I don't have, because we're on Zoom, I'm not pulling up my packet on, I'm pulling it up on my other laptop. So
Let me go ahead and bring that. I can-
with conditions, because I
Okay.
know there are some, yes.
Okay, let me go ahead and put that on the screen right now. And then
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to restate my motion. I move that we approve the vacation of a portion of the Tulsa Road right-of-way as shown on the exhibit provided with ordinance 0620 with the following conditions 1 and 2 as written, and further recommendations 1 and 2 as written.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion is second. Any further discussion? If
Thank
not,
you, Judy.
Is it
Let's vote.
okay that I seconded that even though I'm not supposed to because I was on the planning commission that sent this to you? Is that a bad thing? Is that going to be a problem, Jeff?
No,
Oh, I
it's
guess,
not.
wait a
This
minute,
is-
wait a minute. No. Mr. Mayor, may I have the floor to ask the
Yes.
attorney a question?
Yes, Councilor Wolf, you have the floor.
Thank you. Better late
Okay.
than never.
Okay, no need to repeat the question. I got it. So the answer is no, because frankly, this is not really quasi-judicial in nature. You're dealing with city property. And on the planning commission, you're basically just making a recommendation on it. It's a referral, not on a quasi-judicial issue. It's dealing with city-owned property, so it's fine.
Oh, thank you. I just suddenly remembered that and I didn't want to mess things up. Okay.
No, it's a good question. Thanks.
Well, thank you. That was good of you to think of that, Councilor Wolf. Great. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor? Show of hands. City Clerk?
All hands are up.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. It's good seeing you, and hopefully it'll be in person soon.
Okay, great.
Bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye. I'm going to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, next item of business, resolution number 1920, a resolution in recognition and support of the Charles H. Rocky bronze sculpture. And the city clerk, who do we have to present on this?
Okay, I believe we have Natalie.
And we
Okay,
have Linda and Rob too.
Oh, do we?
Okay.
Okay.
From
Okay.
Orleans.
I'll bring them over and find Natalie. Oh, there she is. Got her hand up. Thank you, Natalie.
okay.
And make sure they've got ability to turn their. Okay. Mute.
All right.
Okay, Natalie, you have the
Okay.
floor.
Sure.
Technically, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We did put together a quick PowerPoint presentation that was not included in the packet, and I don't know if it's possible to bring that up today.
Yes, let me go ahead. I've got it queued up right here. Let me just. Do it. Let me see if I can get it the right size here so we can see it. I'm gonna lose some of my. Here we go. There we go. Okay.
Okay. And Rob and Linda Moreland are here, and this is obviously their project. Rob and Linda, is it okay if I go through the PowerPoint really quick and then you can fill in?
Absolutely.
Please.
Please.
Sound okay? Okay. So again, we just wanted you to have some visuals. These are just sort of demonstrations of what this could be. But again, we're looking at a sculpture in honor of Charles H. Rocky that would go in front of the library, the Carnegie Building in Manitou in that front garden. If you want to go to the next slide. So again, this is a 25-year-old project. Linda has been friends with Rocky since 1978. So this is a project as much about friendship as it is about love and creativity. And they put together this bronze that they sold to fundraise for this project. So I just wanted to share that with you. Next slide. This is Rocky standing with the mold that Rob put together. It is a 6-foot tall design or mold that he has in place. So that just to demonstrate not only that Rocky was aware of the sculpture and approved of it, but he was very much a part of the process. Next slide. And again, just additional images to share of Rocky and then of the bronze as well. Next slide. And again, Rob has a history of work. He had a foundry, they had a gallery in town. He has sculptures that are in public spaces, in Colorado Springs and other communities. So just, he has quite a resume to demonstrate and support his work. Next slide. And again, this project is supported by the Rocky family, the Manitou Springs Arts Council, PARB has approved this, the Manitou Springs Creative District, the Jenkins family, and a lot of neighbors and friends of the community. So there's a lot of support for it, monetary and otherwise. Next slide. And so we're looking for a resolution of support today. A number of the donors have requested some documentation that the city of Manitou Springs supports this project and approves of this project. And again, it creates opportunities for all of us to fundraise. Obviously, this project was post-COVID-19, so fundraising looks differently this year. But just the idea that we have the opportunity to move forward when that makes sense. It honors the life and art of Charles Rocky, highlights our city's commitment to artistic culture, and supports positivity in a time of uncertainty. So the request is that you please pass a resolution in support of the Rocky sculpture this evening. Next slide. So yeah, questions. And again, I would like at this point to bring Linda and Rob forward to tell the story in a more personal way.
Okay.
I think we've spoken before in front of City Council, but just to reiterate, I started the project years ago when I realized that we really don't have a very good track record of honoring people in our society until after they've died, and of course in this case it didn't work that way. And I wanted to show Rocky how much we appreciate him, and just show what a treasure we have in our hometown and have had in our hometown. And so I started working on this project years ago. Fundraising has often been the bigger part of the project, and as well as time. But it was started back, I believe, around 1994, and it's been off and on again, and before City Council a couple of times. And now we would just like to get this thing started and finalized so we can put the sculpture in the city.
Thank you.
Okay.
Of course, we hoped that it would happen before he passed away. That was the plan. And it was his hope that it would be at the city or the library lawn. That was where he had requested. Throughout the years, I wanted to mention he did pose frequently for Rob. And those of you who knew him know he was kind of shy and unassuming, but he was also very excited about this happening.
Council, do we have any questions for the Morelands or for Natalie? Councilor Chandler.
Two things. First of all, a shout out to the artist. Rob, you did a phenomenal job not only of capturing Rocky, but of capturing his magical whimsy and his Middle Earth, I will say. I was curious about two things. One, what you perceive the total project would cost, and where are you currently with fundraising?
The total cost is $175,000. That's for the casting of the bronze, and it's not just the one figure. There's multiple figures around it. And the plaque was created just to give a flavor of what's going on. There are many different little sections that go together with elves and gnomes and little mushrooms for people to sit on and items. So it's not just the one figure. And when I started the whole project, I was going to do a major part of the work myself. Well, that has no longer the case, and so I have to employ other foundries to help with the project, and that's when the price has increased on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this price is based on current numbers from the foundries. That could change due to the economic situation, but
that's it's pretty solid. So.
Okay. Do you have additional comments or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we pass resolution number 1920, a resolution in recognition and support of the Charles H. Rocky bronze sculpture.
Okay, sorry, was that Councilor Chandler?
It was.
Okay,
sorry.
There was some lag on the video, so I wasn't sure, couldn't be sure who was talking. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. Show of hands. All in favor? City Clerk?
All hands are up.
It was unanimous. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yep. If you want to leave me on, I'm on the next item as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Natalie, thank you.
And
Bye, Linda. Bye, Rob.
Okay. Next item, a memorandum of understanding with the Manitou Springs Creative District. And I believe, Natalie, you're going to present.
I am, but I believe Lori Wood is also in attendance. If you could bring her in as well.
Yes. All right. And let's make sure she's got. Okay.
Hello.
Excellent. So I just wanted to bring Lori in as well. She is the co-chair of the Manitou Springs Creative District. And since we are in the process of hiring a new director of the Creative District, this could be my first meeting speaking to all of you as the director. And so we wanted to make sure you had that connection to Lori as well in that transition.
Okay.
I also think that Denise, feel free to speak up at any time, since this is definitely something that was generated between the city as well as the Creative District Board. I'm trying to think, I guess ultimately, I don't want to read the entire MOU to all of you. I guess it would really just be a matter of opening it up to questions and just mentioning that this is something that has been a part of Plan Manitou and something that we've wanted to accomplish for quite a while.
Okay. Counselor Wolf?
Thank you. Hi, Natalie.
Hello.
I noticed about and I know it's non-binding and everything, but I was looking at the language about how we are, kind of promising that probably, hopefully, we'll have a line item in the general budget. And so since and I might need guidance on this from someone who knows better about the budget than I do, but I thought the match monies had to be segregated as not part of the general fund. And so since the Creative District is a 501c3, and since the match ordinance says that the money is for 501c3s, are we supposed to also create a line? Are you also suggesting that it's our hope to not only give you match money, but to also give you general fund money both? Or anyway, I wasn't sure. That just seemed confusing.
Sure.
To me.
So just there's a lot that that needs to be considered. But one of the things that we have suggested is that the Creative District help with the administration of the match funding in terms of taking notes and collecting the grant applications and coordinating the process. And so that we would not be able to then apply for those funds, that we would help administer them. Has
that already been determined? Is that already decided that you're going to be administering them, or is that kind of the hope?
I think it's a good idea. I don't know if hope is the word, but yeah, I think that it would be, again, a conversation to be had with the new director and with the board, certainly.
So by us agreeing that we intend to hopefully probably put a line item in the budget from the general fund for the Creative District, then the Creative District wouldn't be getting any funding from match. Is that the strategy?
I think it's an option and an opportunity.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions or comments for Natalie? Okay. That said, I guess we could entertain a motion to adopt the memorandum.
I move approval of adopting the memorandum with the Creative District.
Okay, and I saw Councilor Wolf, you have had your hand up too?
Well, I'll just second it. I was just going to do the motion. That's
okay,
fine.
that's okay. So we motion a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the memorandum of understanding with the Manitou Springs Creative District, raise your hand. Okay. City Clerk, passes. Did you say unanimously?
Unanimous, yes.
Motion passed unanimously. Great. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Council.
I appreciate it.
Next item, emergency ordinance number 0720, an emergency ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, adding a new chapter 6.80 to Title 6 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning emergency management. Okay. And
I would be happy to address that unless Denise or city staff has any presentation they'd like to do first. Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Shaking her head. Okay, so I mentioned this ordinance to city council, I believe at a previous meeting, and what it's basically designed to do is to put some actual specific provisions in your municipal code, setting forth the procedures for declaring an emergency, and also enumerating who has certain powers during an emergency. Currently, your code doesn't have any real provisions that address who can do what authority there is during an actual declared emergency. And so the general emergency declaration that you pass basically complies with state statute. It makes you eligible for various funding, federal funding typically. But what it doesn't do is basically provide any real details as to how you would exercise that authority. And in particular, it doesn't specifically say that any violations of any particular orders that are issued during an emergency constitute violations of your municipal code. And so it's not to say there aren't provisions in the code that could be cited, and actually certain things could still be violations of the code, but I think it's better to have it spelled out more clearly so your enforcement officers can actually cite to provisions in your code that authorize certain uses of authority, and then also that make them violations of the code. So if somebody violates these orders, you can actually have a citation issued. You can go to muni court. The judge can see what the violation is, and you can see what the penalties are. So a number of our clients have these provisions, but I thought that it would be a good idea that you also put something in your code. And it can basically be used to enforce orders and to issue orders in any emergency, not just this one. So it's good to have for the future. And it can apply to orders dealing with or anything that's related to an emergency. And you'll see a list of sort of example type orders that could be issued in your code. So that's sort of the general gist of the ordinance. I'm happy to discuss it in detail, answer any questions if anybody has any.
Council, do we have questions for Mr. Parker or comments?
I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Councilor Chandler had her hand up first, and then we'll go to Julie.
I just had a few questions on language of a few things, and so they're very brief. One is under 6.80.040. I'm sorry, that's not true. I'm going for I'm looking at the definition. Definition 6.80.020. Can we amend that to include domestic terrorism? I certainly we never thought a pandemic would happen, but I mean, it's pretty all-inclusive. But if we're gonna take the time to do a chapter, I think that we have to consider the possibility of an act of terrorism in that definition.
We could absolutely do that. This isn't, I'm sure you recognize this, but the list is not exclusive. So those aren't the only things that would apply, but it certainly would be appropriate. We've seen that happen in the past, so we could do that.
I had another question under number 4, which starts with to order the closing of any business establishment. My question is the city authorized to close schools?
Where's that?
It's number 4 under, so it's 6.80.040 under powers.
That's an excellent question.
Because it's not stated there, I was just curious what the city could do if we had to close the school down. Would this cover that?
Yeah, frankly, I actually hadn't considered your ability to close down schools, but your home rule jurisdiction, your emergency powers are broad. I think that you probably do, as you have authority to close down other activities of other governmental entities. So my short answer is yes.
Okay. And if so, would we want to include schools in that number 4?
Yeah, once again, I think it would be fine to put in there. It's up to you. I think it's a really good question. I'd like to, my very short answer with high confidence is that yes, you could.
Okay.
If for some reason I determine that there's some issues that I'm not foreseeing right now, I'd certainly bring it to your attention in another meeting. But and depending on the kind of emergency, of course, you could do that. So I'm happy to put it in there. I think it's appropriate if the council agrees.
I had two more quick things, but if someone else wants to jump in, one was 5A, which is highlighted. We don't have an amount in there. I'm going to pass on that one for a minute. The last one was under number 8, to control, restrict, or allocate or regulate the use, sale, production, or distribution of food, water, etc. I think that I would like to see adding shelter to that. In any event that we would have to convert shelters such as motels, etc., for other uses such as hospitals. So I just want to add shelters to that. Do we have the power to appropriate, say, a motel if we need to turn it into a short-term hospital or something like that? Do we have that power?
Yeah, so, my answer to you is going to be you have very broad powers in an emergency. And of course, the powers have to be exercised in a reasonable fashion to deal with an emergency. So I think if ultimately you could justify that, you could. The law is complicated. It's not simple, but my answer is generally yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, good. Councillor Wolf, I believe you're next.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to suggest maybe we could, include the language that for the definitions section, the 020, that says including but not limited to, so we don't have to think of everything possible, even though I think the paragraph already covered the hostile military or paramilitary action seems to cover what Councillor Chandler was talking about, but it seems to me if we just say including but not limited to, and we can use that same language on 040 under powers including but not limited to, and then we don't have to fuss about everything that might be accidentally omitted. And then I also wanted, finally, just to keep it simple, I was going to suggest that for the, subparagraph A, 5A of 6.80.040, that we indicate in there that the sanctions or the fines, well, it shouldn't be fines, but that the punishments shall be pursuant to, refer to the other city code that talks about the judge, that she would have discretion to impose a fine not to exceed, I think the number was $2,650, and or up to 90 days in jail, I think is what our code says. I would just refer it back to that instead of creating like a whole separate punishment scheme just for this one violation. That's more of a suggestion to my fellow council members. I'm not addressing that to Jeff. I guess, Jeff, you could say if you think that's an okay idea or not.
Yeah, I'd like to address both of those. And so just for your first point regarding subsections 020 and 040 about the including but not limited to language, it's actually in both of those provisions. So
good idea. I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, no problem. I got it in there already. 060, the way it's written right now, which is the enforcement and penalties provision, it refers to your general penalty provision in your code, which is the 2650 and the 90 days in jail. So it's just a direct reference to your general penalty provision. So it's the same as for most violations of your code. They don't have anything specifically different.
So that would go under the 5A subsection there where you have
no, so I think we're actually getting a little bit twisted because 6.80.060 is the enforcements and penalties provision. And then 5A is actually how much authority the administrator has to basically sign contracts.
Well, I'm looking at 040 sub 5A.
Yeah, and so what that
you have that blank.
Yeah, and that's basically saying what the spending authority is for the city administrator to spend without approval.
Oh, I see. You're talking about how much the city administrator in her sole discretion without consulting with council can spend from our general budget if she thinks there's an emergency?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I would suggest it be not to exceed $100 without council's. I think that should be a council decision personally.
The city administrator currently has contracting authority up to, and I believe it's 50,000.
Oh my God. Well, I think that's a bit much, but I don't agree with that. But okay, at least you explained it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, so we do need to put a number in there if we could.
I think it should be a lot less than 50 grand. It's not that difficult to call an emergency meeting and talk about it when you have an emergency. I think it's good to involve all of us and not just have like a king or a dictator or one person who makes the decision without consulting. So I'm not in favor of such a huge number without us all weighing in on it personally.
Well, our everyday number right now is $50,000. That's just day to day. The council, the city administrator can approve amounts up to that without having to come to council. In the time of emergency, I think the general expectation is that that amount would be increased, and I believe it's not unreasonable for a city our size to have a limit of about $100,000 in case of emergency.
What's that based on? What's your understanding based on, I mean?
Sampling of other Colorado communities about this size. I'm not sure.
Like which ones?
I don't know specifically which ones. I think it was in the CML report.
Okay.
But
thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know specifically.
That's okay. And you know, we can't see you anymore, John. You went away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are.
My apologies. I was looking at the document, so I guess that took me off. My apologies. I see Mayor Pro Tem has her hand up, and then Chandler. Mayor Pro Tem, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. I would, given that it's currently 50K, I would also like to raise it to 100K because I don't think it always is particularly easy to get an emergency. If we're all being asked to evacuate or, you know, our homes all just got wiped out or something, I think that there are times that an emergency declaration is so time sensitive and the ability to expend dollars is so critical that I would like to give a bit more flexibility so that we're not bound to getting the city council together for that. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Councilor Chandler, I believe you had your hand up next.
And I was going to suggest that same amount, and my reasoning, in addition to what Mayor Pro Tem so eloquently said, is that this would be a catastrophic event. And so as we've seen with the catastrophic event that we're in right now, every second counts. And so any lack of any time that we waste getting emergency things set up can cost lives. So I would say limited to no greater than 100,000. I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Councilor Wolf.
I have a question, if I might, for Nancy and Judith. Would you be comfortable if the language said that the administrator, the city administrator, shall make every reasonable effort to confer with council and to schedule an emergency meeting? And if that is deemed in the sole discretion of the city administrator, if that is deemed to be not possible, then the administrator will have the emergency spending powers. Would that be an acceptable compromise, that she try to contact us, and if she can't, then she can decide herself?
I could probably live with that. Again, and I don't, you know, I'm looking at catastrophes when the city is literally burning down or something, when even to spend time on the phone to get us all together is unreasonable. So I do think that it implies a level of trust between the council and the city administrator. And Jeff, I would assume that if we get a city administrator that council doesn't trust, we can go back in and amend this. God forbid that should ever happen. But anyway, I just think that the flexibility in a true time-sensitive emergency is kind of important.
So that doesn't really answer my question, though. My question is not, excuse me, my question.
Sorry.
I lost audio.
The Mayor Pro Tem still has the floor.
I said up front that I could live with that compromise. I just would prefer not to have that included in any motion as we approve this. I would if I had to, because I think it's very important for us to pass this tonight.
Yes. Councilor Wilbrook?
Thank you. I think that this is our opportunity to make this policy. I think that if things are happening, I really don't want our city administrator to have this extra step to have to try to convene an emergency meeting. And unfortunately, while it sounds like a lot of money, it's really not if we have a fantastically huge emergency. And our job is policy, and this policy is to set these numbers now and to say that we trust that that is going to be what happens in an emergency. And I think that Nancy's point is well taken, that we might be evacuating, we might be sick, who knows what might be happening to us. And we don't like to think about those things, but I would prefer that the numbers given be what we give our city administrator the authority to do. And we always have the option, I think, to, change things if we have the time and the ability to do it. But it sounds like a lot of money, but in a terrible emergency where this would be enacted, I don't think that it's going to be a problem. And I don't want us to get into the weeds like that. And I don't want us to go beyond policy at that point, because really at that point we're authorizing our city administrator to do something operationally. The reason they'd be spending that money is for an operation, and it wouldn't be a policy. And I think tonight we come up with this number that we can live with and hope that we never have to use it, but know that if we do, this is an operations expense, and that is the role of the city administrator. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Howell, please. You have the floor.
What if you put in there up to 100,000, if that's what you choose, and that the city administrator would then communicate with council of those expenses as needed, so that it's at least required that you communicate when that happens. Jeff, do you have any input of what the best practice is? I did some research today on some things, and do you have best practice?
It's done differently, but there is language in subsection B that requires you to communicate those expenses to city council. I have clients who do have language that says shall attempt to contact the mayor for approval. So there's like a check. Other ones don't. They just say it's an emergency and therefore you get to spend more money. I don't think there's a real practice one way or the other. It's whatever city council deems is appropriate.
Okay. Well, I would be in favor of going with that $100,000 limit. It's a lot of money, I realize, in our normal everyday experience, but in time of emergency, it may not be that significant. I can imagine it's very, be really being under the gun and needing to make that motion or make that move. Councilor Chandler.
I'd kind of like to just ask a question on the other end of it. What if we truly were in an emergency, a serious emergency again, and that we had a city administrator that had to spend more than that? We needed more than that. And I guess I'll ask you this question, Jeff. Would the city administrator be able to spend more in an emergent situation where city council we've already washed downstream or something?
Oh.
Yeah, not the way it's currently written.
Okay.
No. And just as a note, city council does have, the way it works is the city administrator can declare an emergency for 7 days maximum. And then city council has to extend that. And you can always meet before that. So, I understand Councilor Wolf's concern is that, you want to be able to control what's being spent. City council does have some responsibility for making sure the budget is reasonably dealt with, but you could certainly meet earlier and put further restrictions on this if you wanted to, as part of your follow-up after the initial declaration. So you wouldn't just be stuck forever with this. In any emergency, you could basically convene and deal with it pretty quickly if there was a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Wolf.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that my suggestion was that in the sole discretion of the city administrator, if he or she determines that there isn't enough time to pick up the phone and call anybody to an emergency meeting, then the city administrator will go ahead and spend the $100,000 without us. And the response from the mayor pro tem, from Nancy, is, oh, I don't want her to have to make a phone call if she's too busy. So that means she didn't understand what I said. I'm not saying if she's too busy, she has to make the phone call anyway and convene an emergency meeting. I'm saying that we're just asking her if it's possible, within reason, in your personal opinion, to notify us first. You will. If you decide no, there's no time, you won't. So if the answer is, oh, we can't do that because she might run out of time, that means you don't trust her. I trust her if the whole city is on fire and she can't reach anybody to spend the money and not call us. I trust her if it's an emergency like COVID, that she'll notify us first and we'll have a meeting. So that was why I don't necessarily, wanted to say that she only has to notify one of us, or just the mayor, or just Mayor Pro Tem, or just both of them. I just think if she feels she can notify us, she will, because we are a democracy. We're not a dictatorship. And if she doesn't think she has time to notify us, she doesn't have to. So I don't see what's so restrictive about that language. So I just wanted to comment on it because I didn't think the excuse made sense.
Are you asking for a response from me?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Thank you.
So it sounds like we have several modifications proposed here. Councilor Chandler, Councilor Wolf discussed those. We also have the ceiling amount for the city administrator. Several things here. I think I've heard answers from several people that we'd like to get this passed tonight. So it seems to me like we could go through and make the amendments if necessary. We'd have to walk through that and be pretty specific. I suppose alternatively, we could give it back to Mr. Parker and ask him to make those recommendations. That would delay us by a couple of weeks. I guess, Councilor Chandler, you had discussed the original changes. If you could enumerate those, and we're willing to support the ones that Principal Councilor Wolf spoke, so that we could articulate an amendment, or to make a motion with the changes. Does that seem to make sense to the council?
If I could, and I'm hesitant to bring this up. I'm fine. I think Councilor Chandler made a lot of good recommendations, but I think that for me, they're overridden by what Councilor Wolf brought up, is that every paragraph that Councilor Chandler brought up has a contingency of, pretty much all inclusive. So I think we could think of all kinds of things that we might want to include, but I think, there's that phrase in each of them that you can lump everything under. So I'm easy. The only thing, my sense, I think, the only change that I feel strongly about is to include the 100K in paragraph 5A there.
Okay.
And that's not a change, that's just, correcting that.
Right. Councilor Chandler.
I agree. I'm okay with definition as is. I guess the only reason that I would want the word shelter to be put in there is I'm looking at it from if I was a business owner and the city said, we're going to have to take your motel and we're going to turn it into a field hospital. I would want that word shelter to be in there, so we know that unfortunately, if that happens, that the city administrator has broad powers. And I don't know, Jeff, what do you think? If it's not important enough to put in there, fine. But with the coronavirus, we've seen that happen. We've seen makeshift hospitals in city parks and so on and so forth. So the idea of taking areas such as city parks or other shelters such as motels where they're housing homeless people, we've seen it with this pandemic. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So just to briefly, that was in subsection 8. I think you could add the word shelter in there. And I think it's important for me to make the point that there are other legal issues dealing with just taking somebody's property and just using it for a public purpose. So I know that if people who are listening, I don't want them to think that the city attorney was saying, oh, we can take your motel and just use it
Right.
publicly. I think you have the authority to control and regulate it to a certain extent, but the idea that we could just take it and do what we want to with it, that's a whole nother issue. So putting the word shelter in,
Okay.
I think is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wolf, did you? Yeah, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. So in other words, Jeff, even if the word shelter is in there, we're not going to be able to use any money to take over any private property because we call it an emergency and turn it into a hospital. We'd have to go to court and do all this stuff first anyway, right?
Yeah, there are certain limits to your authority,
Right. I mean, you
even in
can't
an
just
emergency.
Yeah, in other words, we can't just take over private property because there's a little sentence in this law about it.
Right.
We still can't do it. So, I mean, you know, that's like saying we can send a man to a moon on an emergency. Well, good luck. There's no rocket to get, you know, we got to do all this process before we could do that. So,
Yeah, and so just to be clear, that section, the way it reads is just to control, restrict, allocate, or regulate. And then it's like, and then you put shelter in there. There's some authority there, but as with everything legal, there's a lot of other issues you got to deal with. So,
Right.
because one thing says here's your authority doesn't mean there's other laws that don't apply. So,
Correct.
oh, and I appreciate that because I just don't want anybody who's listening to think, oh my God, they could decide they're going to take over my house for all the homeless people tomorrow. If there's an emergency, we can't do that.
that's why I wanted to make that point. And I think for people who are out there, anybody who's looking at this ordinance, it does outline very broad authority, but there's a lot of limitations still legally. This is just giving the authority for the city to act within other legal confines. So, what I don't want to have happen is somebody to say that you didn't have the authority from your own city to do this. But there's a lot of other considerations, definitely.
Thank you.
So I get the sense that council would probably be okay with the ordinance the way it is, if we added shelter in there and if we stipulated the $100,000 in the blank space. It seems like we could make those amendments and get this passed tonight. Any comment on that?
I agree.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion to that?
Yes, let me just get back to that one.
Okay, sure.
I move that we approve ordinance number 0720, an emergency ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, adding a new chapter 6.80 to title 6 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning emergency management with the two changes. One, addition of the word shelter in the appropriate paragraph, and the addition of the sum of $100,000 in 5A.
Okay. We have a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, let's take a vote. Show of hands in favor. Okay. Hands down. All opposed, raise your hand. Okay. City Clerk?
So that was 5-1 in favor. Councillor Wolf opposed.
Opposed. Okay, this motion passes. All right, thank you. Some good comments on that. Thank you all for your discussion. I found that informative. Next item of business, received or act on council correspondence. We go ahead. Is anybody who'd like to start? Well, let's go in reverse alphabetical order. Councillor Wolbrook. Okay. Councillor Wolf?
Yes, thank you. Couple things. I had reached out to Emerald Fields and got a return call a couple days later. And I'm sorry, but I forget the owner's name. It's the same guy who. What?
Doug.
Oh, Doug, thank you. Yeah, it was the same person who sent the day after we spoke, he sent us all an email. And basically what he said to me is, I said, I'm calling because I've been reading that the stores around the country that sell recreational marijuana are like 70% above volume than normal. And would it help you to have the hours extended? He explained that at the moment, because of the extra staffing required to enforce the social distancing, he actually is short of staff. He said all of his other stores, I think there were 3 or more in Colorado, are open always until midnight. He sees no reason why, you know, we would object to that. So basically, he said he would love for it to say that they can have extended hours, but that there's no rush because he wouldn't exercise the right to use the extended hours until after the social distancing is over. I also received communications from Dave Wolverton, who said that, and I'd have to check my cell phone, but 4 or 5 years now, I can't remember if it was 4 or 5, he's been making periodic calls to Kai, our enforcement officer, our only enforcement officer, to say that, hey, the conditional use permit that was issued years ago to the warehouses that are up on Higginbotham Flats, that their condition prohibits them from storing anything outside their building. And for the last 4 or 5 years, he's been complaining to city that we're not doing anything and they're storing all this junk outside. Kai did say to him, allegedly, and well, you know, just make sure to notify me anytime you see a violation, because there's only one of me. I can't know about all the violations. So it's very important for the public to keep their eyes open and to keep me informed. And I informed Dave Wolverton that, oh, Kai has said that to me too. But Dave suggested a few things. He said, one, he would like that we post all CUP conditional use permits on the city website, because how are we supposed to report violations of conditions if we don't see the conditions? So I thought that was a good point.
Okay.
And then he said he thought we should put a moratorium on all future conditional use permits until such time as we have staff to enforce the conditions. And I said, oh, that's a good point. But then I said, you know, maybe there's a reason that this has been going on for 4 or 5 years. Maybe, you know, we do have fines and stuff, but maybe the city code somehow doesn't have a fine associated with CUP violations. Maybe the only recourse for a CUP violation is to initiate an action through Planning Commission to revoke the permit, and then Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and then it gets sent up to council, and then council, you know, does its whole thing.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe it's not a situation where we are short of staff to do enforcement. Maybe it's just that the only enforcement mechanism available to us under our law is for Planning Commission to revoke, to threaten to revoke. So I would not only like to report on this, but to see if I can have some, a response from our city attorney, if he knows, or maybe if not, he may just have to look it up and answer next week to see. Do we have, am I allowed to ask him if we have a code, a fine for such a situation, or am I supposed to make a motion about that?
I think you can ask him. Certainly, Mr. Parker, can you respond?
Well, no, it's a great question. And actually, when you started talking about this, I saw your question coming, and I thought, I don't actually know the answer to whether or not a violation of a conditional use is a violation of the code. I definitely know that you can revoke the conditional use permit. That's definitely allowed. So my quick answer would be, you know, it seems like maybe it should be, but I want to take a look at your code more carefully and before I give you the wrong answer. So I want to make sure that I look at this, and I'll get you a response quickly.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Councilor Wolf?
No, thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Great. Mr. Shada?
I'm good.
You are? Okay. Take your word for it. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just wanted to ask, I think that Julie's question is a really interesting one. And so, Jeff, are you just going to respond via email and a letter or something, or memo?
Yeah, I'll respond to all of council so you all have the answer.
Okay, yeah, that would be a useful tool for us. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And other than that, I have nothing.
Nothing else then? Okay, great. Councilor Chandler.
Two quick things. We're moving forward with the planting of 148 trees in the city of Manitou this Saturday. It has been a monumental effort to coordinate this via distance. We have the trees coming Friday. The areas have been marked. The holes will be pre-dug by Public Works. We have, everyone will sign a waiver. We will be practicing the governor's guidance on social distancing, and everyone will be wearing a mask. I am putting together a separate, in addition to the standard waiver that we have to sign, have every individual sign. I am putting together a separate COVID-19 waiver of sorts, and Administrator Howell, I promise I'll have it on your desk tomorrow. My question is to Jeff on this. Should I add any language on the COVID separate waiver that each signature, each person that signs the waiver will state that they are symptom-free of the typical symptoms of COVID? And maybe I'm just being overcautious, but since I'm putting it together, do you recommend I put some language on it to that effect and list this?
Sorry, go ahead.
Just something to the effect that I so-and-so, by signing this waiver, I'm stating that I am symptom-free of the typical symptoms of COVID-19, because we'll be doing everything, but we won't be taking everybody's temperature. There will be 10 people max in each planting area. So, and we will be practicing social distancing. And I sent out a really a detailed email to everyone, and I'm actually having everyone call me before we assign them to a planting area. So I'm asking you basically, did I cover all my bases?
Well, it sounds like you covered them. The only thing is that a waiver is basically waiving any claims they have against you versus
right.
a statement that
right.
they actually are symptom-free doesn't really waive anything. And so,
okay.
I guess that I don't think it's an issue having people make sure people tell you or at least acknowledge that they're not sick in any way. And part of the problem, I think, with COVID is that a lot of people can have it. They don't know you have it. So, I mean, I think that you want to make that a requirement. I'm not really necessarily sure if a statement or a waiver makes a huge difference from city liability perspective, but.
Just wanted to dot all my I's and cross all my T's on this one. It's been such an effort. I just didn't want to leave anything undone.
No, I understand that. Yeah, no. So I see Councilmember Wolf's got her hand raised too.
Yeah. Councilor Wolf, would you like to make a comment?
Seems to me if we're going to do a waiver, the waiver should say if you do this project, you can't sue us if something bad happens to you. So if you get your head smashed by the tree that falls on your head, or you sprain your ankle, or you get COVID from Councilor Chandler, whatever it is, you can't sue us. That would be important, that would be more important to me than, oh, I promise I don't think I'm sick.
Right.
Well, I would like to, if we're going to do a waiver, I think we should protect the city from getting sued by having a thing that says, I'm doing this voluntarily and I won't sue the city if something bad happens. That would be a nice waiver.
Well, that is covered in the standard city waiver, of the same stuff that, we can use your photograph in the newspaper and that kind of stuff. But I was just trying to put together a separate COVID guideline. It's not even really a waiver. It's more like an information sheet. I so-and-so understand that we are under, social distancing order by the government, and this is what they are, and I want you to sign that you acknowledge that is basically what I wanted that to be. Did that
May I ask Judith a question about that?
Yes, Councilor Wolf, go ahead.
So does that mean you are going to give the standard city waiver also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sign the standard city waiver, and I was going to do an additional one, very simple. But I just wanted to ask our attorney, since we have him here, if I've covered all my bases, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like you did, and I'm not arguing with Councilor Wolf. I think she's exactly right. I think that if the statement says that participating in this activity, I certify that I'm symptom-free, wouldn't hurt.
Okay. And the only other thing, if anyone else doesn't have any suggestions or recommendations for me, is I just wanted to remind Judy and Administrator Howell that I had asked for a list of all of the projects that were on hold that had matching funds And I just was hoping that maybe I could get that this week.
With that. Okay, I'm sorry.
She's
Denise,
muted.
Denise, you're
Send
muted.
that out in an email, but I'll resend it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That's it for me.
Oh, can you resend it to me too,
You bet.
Denise? I missed that.
Yeah, Becca, either Becca or I, Becca, so I will make sure we get it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay, I just have a couple things to report. First, with regard to the storage unit, the problem that Councilor Wolf had mentioned, and Mr. Wilburton had mentioned that to me back in January. I happened to be up there today. I was just out for a walk, and I noticed that the vehicles have been removed, except there's two U-Haul rental trucks still there. But there had been several vehicles and a couple of tow-behind trailers, so those are now gone. So it looks like we did make some progress on that. I do think the idea of that Councilor Wolf had proposed to go back and check on the conditional use permits periodically, some sort of enforcement like that would be a good idea. So perhaps you'd like to carry that forward, Councilor Wolf. One other thing, I did have a phone call with Mayor Suthers today, and it looks like the federal reimbursement or the aid under phase 3 for COVID-19, that money will be available through the county, possibly as early as, well, we may be able to start seeking reimbursement, doing the paperwork next week. So we're looking to that to hopefully get some money in. That's all I have. Thank you. Let's see. So that covers council correspondence. We now have something that's it's new to the order of agenda here, and that would be future agendas. What I'd like to do is go around the room basically among the councilors and see if you have any suggestions for future agendas. My feeling is that if 4 councilors feel that's worth entertaining, then we can go ahead and move it to talk about it at a meeting. So I'll start, I guess we'll go alphabetically. Councilor Chandler. Do you have any?
Well, I would really like to see conversation with council about how we are going to plan to open up our city and make sure that we still stay safe. And so, you know, it's a big deal. I don't know how I feel about it. I think that if we do it right, it's going to be great. But I'd like us to have a conversation about that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of that? Show of hands. Okay, so we've got 4, we got 5, and okay, so that's enough. Okay. Very good.
That's it for now.
Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's good.
I think it's a great thing, and I believe I think it's actually on our agenda to look at some of these issues on next Tuesday, if memory serves me. And I just wanted to ask Jeff on what all can council and what all, is it just what the city is, I mean, who makes the decisions?
Yeah.
Is it policy or is it operations?
So that's a pretty broad question and kind of hard to just give a quick answer to. And so are you saying like who makes the decisions about like how to proceed with assisting businesses and like city operations itself? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well, how much does council get engaged with? To me, the only thing we did was we did the emergency proclamation a month ago. So other than removing the emergency proclamation, is there, or making changes to that emergency proclamation, is there anything else that council should be getting involved in terms of decisions, or do we just get updates?
Yeah, so I always look at like City of Manitou Springs as sort of 2 layers of city control. And the first layer is city council, who handles policy, overall, goal setting, mission setting. And then operations are delegated generally to the city administrator. So the city administrator executes on city council's guidance. But whenever a city administrator asks me what do I have the authority to do this, or should I do this? You know, I always advise, keep city council informed, keep them engaged, you know, make sure that where you're proceeding is generally in line with what you believe is appropriate. So if I generally leave operational aspects to the city administrator, but clearly if city council has a feeling that something should be done differently, or they want to basically, you know, direct the city administrator to a certain extent, I think that they should make that clear. But ultimately, cities run better when city administrators handle operations in line with city council's expectations versus city council getting involved in the day-to-day activities. That's my quick answer.
Denise?
But based on the declaration, the city administrator has no authority over the incline. That is 100% council.
Yeah.
Correct? So that is no authority under the city administrator. That is a council decision of how to move forward.
That is absolutely right.
Right. Councilor Chandler, did you have a comment there?
You answered my question. My question was specifically about the incline. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune, did you have any nominations for the agenda? For future?
No, other than to say that the incline is on the agenda next week. So we'll have another opportunity to look at that in association with the emergency proclamation.
Okay. Let's see, and I don't have anything. Councilman Shada?
I think everybody's discussed what I'm interested in. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Wolbrook? You're muted.
Yes, sorry. No additions other than what's already been discussed. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Wolf?
Thank you. It's great that Jeff Parker just said that the role of city council is to goal setting and mission setting. I've been asking to do that since before I got sworn in. I was told when I brought that up, I think it was on March 17th, that, oh, just look at the city website, I think is what Denise said. Just read the city website. That explains everything you need to know about what's going on. But that doesn't satisfy me. So I would like to have a work session, a minimum of 2 or 3 hours set aside to hear from, as Councilor Chandler said, to hear from each department. What are their projects? What are their priorities? Where are we in terms of the financing of them? Matching funds, no matching funds, what have you? Are we in the middle of some contract with a grant, on a grant or not? And then I would like to set our goals and our missions rather than just being reactive all the time. I thought that's what the retreat would be. I thought that's what you usually do at the beginning of having a new board, but the retreat ended up being a meeting all day about manners. So I'm going to reiterate for about the 4th time that I would like it on the agenda. And I'm not talking about a 30-minute thing. And I'm not talking about, the pool. The only thing they're doing is they're upgrading their electric system this year. That's what was on the website. No, I want specifics. And I think we need to hear about that so that we can coalesce as a group and come up with goals and our mission. So I would like that to be on the agenda, and I'd like to have a substantial amount of time for it. And I've said this repeatedly.
Councilor Wolbrook? You're muted.
Thank you. I think perhaps a logical time to do what Julie's asking for would be near when we talk about our mid-year budget, which is typically, I believe, in June or July, because the department heads could then tell us what they're doing and how COVID has impacted them, because that would impact perhaps everyone's goals. I don't know how valuable it is, Denise or Roy could answer this, and even the mayor could weigh in on this, to have this goals conversation when we have a plan based on the governor, which the county seems to, have subscribed to, but we don't really know what's going to happen. And I think that we have to do a mid-year budget, and it could be a 3 or 4 hour, whatever time you think is appropriate, but it kind of does two things at once. It tells us the money issue, and then it's probably a list of revised goals from department heads as well as from city administration. That informs us as a council and takes care of that budget and Julie's wish for, okay, what are the goals? So what are we trying to accomplish? Certainly that would be for the rest of the year. That budget meeting that we have in October, typically, I believe it's October, it may be earlier, forgive me. I mean, last year we did an all-day meeting where department heads presented their departments all through the day with their goals, their projects, their matching funds, and how it fits into the budget. And April, we're almost at the end of April. It's about to be May. It's coming up sooner than we think, this whole mid-year budget thing. And I would defer to the mayor and the mayor pro tem because they're more on top of that. But that might be a way to get it all done at once with realistic, logical information given where we are with COVID. That's my suggestion to meet what Julie's asking, to not take extra time from council to have a 3 or 4 hour meeting when I think all of those things tie together in that moment, and that will give us a more realistic look of what really the goals of the city are. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I think Judith had her hand up first, and then we have Julie and Nancy. So Judith?
I think it's a wonderful idea to get together when the time is right to talk about our goals, and at a time when we can start working on those again. And I just want to make sure that we include our new council person from Ward 3 in that important meeting. So I just want to make sure that we time that to include our new Ward 3 councilor.
It's a very good point. Good. Councilor Wolf?
With the $1.4 million that we just took from the URA, is that going to be on hold until our next budget approval meeting, or is that going to be spent at the discretion of the administrator?
Then basically we anticipate using that as a cushion if we have to. It's basically a safety net. If we don't have to use it all or any of it, we won't. But right now it appears that we will have to use it just for day-to-day expenses, basic general fund kinds of things. Yeah, just Councilor Wolf?
Well, that's why I would like to weigh in, because I don't want to find out that we've been paying an event planner and a full-time information officer all these months when maybe that's not the best use of that money. And so my question is, does the city administrator have discretion to spend all that money before our budget meeting? I think the mayor's answer was just, yes, she does. It's up to her. Is that a short, am I hearing you correctly? Paraphrasing your response correctly, that yes, it's up to her, whatever?
Well, I think that simplifies it a bit, but in large measure, it would be available for the city.
It's either a yes or a no. It's not that, if I'm missing a nuance, I want you to tell me. That's important to me, and that's why I'm asking you for follow-up clarification, because to me, what you were basically saying is it's up to her. And if that's fine, if that's your answer, I just want to know, because I'm concerned about that much money being spent on certain positions that maybe aren't that essential right now in the city. And so I want to know, are we going to come in June or October and find out, oh, that money's already spent, we're just going to talk about something else? Or what's happening with that 1.4 million? Because we all approved that without knowing anything about how it might get spent.
Okay.
And I just thought, $1.5 million more than normal. I want to know how it's being spent. If I have to wait until June or October, whatever. I've been waiting since January to have this meeting. I think for us to be effective, it would be helpful to know where are we and where are we going, and to wait until we're 3/4 of the way into our first term or the first year is a little behind the 8 ball, in my opinion. So I just want to know, what's the story with that money?
Okay, for the $1.4 million from the URA, just like every dollar we have in the city's budget, whether it comes from the URA or from anywhere, every dollar, in my opinion, needs to be spent judiciously, and we need to extract as much value as possible. regardless
Yeah,
of
but
where
my
that,
question is, who's going to make the decision? My question isn't, should we spend it wisely? Of course we should spend it wisely. I'm trying to pin you down on, does the city administrator have sole discretion, in your opinion, to spend the money or not? And you keep saying other things like, well, this is really important. I want an answer to my question.
I guess if you want a yes or no answer to a complex situation, then you're going to get kind of a compromise, but I'd say yes within the normal protocol for spending the money. Yes, but we have the option to oversee the budget, to come back and do course corrections. And I think there are going to be a lot of course corrections this year because we don't know how much money we're spending or how much money we might get. I think what we can pretty well anticipate is that we're going to be short, and it's going to be a hard, not only this year, but the coming years will be difficult. So we'll have to be very careful.
Are we still paying the event coordinator? And what events is she coordinating?
I'm seeing some other hands here. I think, Susan, you've been
I
persistent.
have two questions, and then I'll, so one, I thought maybe Jeff could maybe help me remember, but I believe our city administrator is also our city budget officer as part of the charter. And second question is, a lot of people are canceling or rescheduling events right now. So my impression is from reading the emails that I'm getting and the updates is that actually Megan is quite busy right now for that very reason. But I think that Denise or Roy could answer that. But those were my two questions. And I just wanted to, I mean, if Denise is by charter our city budget officer, then she has the authority to spend those funds. But Jeff needs to clarify that for me. I don't know how that works, and I could be misunderstanding it.
Well, the budget officer is generally in charge of preparing the budget that gets approved by city council.
Okay.
So I don't think it particularly means that they have carte blanche authority to spend the funds. They just help prepare the budget and bring it to city council. But that's typically done under Denise's guidance by finance. So I don't think that would affect her authority to spend funds.
Thanks for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem had her hand up.
Yeah, I know that we've had this particular item on the agenda we've tried to put it on several times and it's been overcome by events. I believe it is currently scheduled for May 12th. If you look at, and Judy, you could confirm that for me. But I believe that we have council goals, priorities tentatively scheduled for May 12th at this point in time. I think that continual updates on this sort of thing, hopefully things will be to a point where the staff can prepare that report for us and we can talk, and I talk about where we are with everything. And I think we've not, as a council, really addressed what our priorities are. And typically there's like 6 priorities or something, and we've not really done that. You know, so a priority might be, is retaining staff the most important priority? I think that there's a strong case to be made for that. But it needs to be balanced with some other things. So I think that there are 2 sets of priority under our current conditions, under COVID, the emergency of COVID. It might be a slightly different set of priorities than if we'd set our priorities back in January. So this is, as the mayor said, this is very, very complex. And it's going to be even if, I do believe we have at least 2 hours scheduled for it. I can't remember now. But this is something that it'll be a very difficult, I think, discussion to manage. And hopefully we can get there so that we can spend it very, very productively. But that'll be a tough meeting to manage. So I just want to put that out there to manage expectations.
Yeah.
Those are scheduled for that date, as you stated.
Right. Yes. I think Councilor Chandler, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yes. I thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You already addressed some things I was going to bring up. I just wanted to remind us just gently remind us that what a difference a month makes in our lives. And, we may, I've been a nurse practitioner for 26 years. We're not even at the tipping point of getting out of this yet. So, when we're looking at this in May, or June or July, we just have to remain really, really flexible because we don't even know what's coming yet. So I just want to say, you know, in May, these may be our priorities, and in June, we may have to do a 180. So I agree that we have to put it on the agenda and talk about this, but I trust the city administrator and the mayor, and I wouldn't have voted for that money had I not trusted that it would be used judiciously and for everything that we needed. And the administration has not disappointed me at all. You've done a phenomenal job. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilor Wolf.
This is a question for Jeff Parker. So Jeff, I guess maybe trying to put the pieces together, I should have been asking Mayor Graham to answer those questions for me. Maybe it's more of a legal question. So we've approved a particular budget, not we personally, but previous council approved a budget. Now we have 1.4 million from the URA. Does the city administrator have authority to spend that 1.4 million without any further consent from us, so long as it's consistent with the prior budget? Or do we need, is that money supposed to be put on hold until we approve that aspect of the budget?
So the way I look at it is you have a budget with appropriated funds for certain expenditures, and the source of the money that basically is used to pay for those expenditures isn't relevant. So the authority is basically as it would be for any other sources of revenue in the general fund. The city administrator or whoever, under the procurement policy and the terms of the city code, have the authority to basically spend money for those budgeted expenses. And the fact that it comes from the URA or somewhere else doesn't make any difference. So if that's extra money and the revenues are higher than the city ends up anticipating, and there's more money than you thought, that money can't be spent until you have a new budget or a new appropriation.
Right.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I also just wanted to remind council that the city administrator has just stopped doing a whole lot of things, not knowing if revenue would be available or not. And that has been published both in the weekly update as well as in the Pikes Peak Bulletin. So the city, I think, is well aware of, you know, we are working basically in an emergency situation and under, you know, just stopped as much as we possibly can until we could sort all of this out.
Good. Okay, well, to recap, I see two agenda items here. Councilor Chandler, you'd like to see about opening the city up. That we've anticipated, so we'll see that here in the future pretty soon. Councilor Wolf, your focus on individual projects and priorities. There was some time, it's already been reserved for May the 12th. That'd be the first work session where we have the new Ward 3 council person in. So that seems like a good time to focus there.
Well, may I comment on that?
Sure.
If we're setting aside 2 hours on May 12th, I'd like to set aside 2 more hours the following work session, please. I don't think 2 hours will be enough. And just in case it's not, why don't we reserve a spot? Because that's, as you all been saying, it's such a complicated issue. I don't know that we're going to get through it in 2 hours. Or are you going to, if you're going to keep us to the 2 hours, then I want to put it on another future agenda item. If you're going to let us be flexible and finish the discussion until we're done, then it's not relevant. I just can't tell because there's this big thing about sticking to the time frame. So that's why I'm raising this question. Okay.
I guess my own thought would be that this is a big enough thing where it's going to take several work sessions or several sessions. And it's probably the kind of thing where if we take it in smaller blocks, say like 2 hour blocks, will I think be more effective than to say try and do it, you know, in one big 4 hour or full day event. That's my thought there.
So does that mean yes? We can put it on another agenda item on another day?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
What day? Can we put it on the next work session after May 14th?
Will it be the 26th, I guess, May 26th, probably. Let's see what we've got anything on there. Let me real quick check and see what the agenda looks like for
the 14th is a Thursday.
I'm sorry, I meant the 12th. My apologies. Yeah, May 12th.
Then the 26th?
We could do, yeah, the 26th. We don't have anything on the 26th, so that'd be fine.
I mean, This is a little out of line, but I originally told you I wouldn't be here on the 26th. I notified you a while ago that I'd be out of town for the 26th and I'd miss that work session.
Yeah.
I'm not going out of town anymore, so I'll be here.
Oh, okay.
I'll be here.
Oh, all right. I thought it was the 28th of April, next week. Okay.
Oh, maybe it was. Whatever it was, I'm not going away.
Okay. Okay. So basically, to your point, I guess we'd be looking at the work sessions on May the 12th and May the 26th. And we try to hammer out as much of this as we can. Does that seem like a reasonable focus to everybody? Okay. So cultivate your ideas. Great. Okay. Next item be city administrator report. Mr. Cheney.
Yeah, just letting you know that MAPS is moving forward, and we will present that next month to council on that project. And I'll be meeting with the pollinator group and the Manitou Garden Club tomorrow to coordinate efforts in planting flowers in the parks. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, great. Denise?
Couple of quick things. I did talk to the county administrator today also, and it looks like the county is going to get about $100 to $124 million for the first time around. And we'll be talking about what portion, if any, we get that. I think we're going to get some, and it will be per capita basis right now. So we're working on that with them. I did just get notification from the Community Foundation that they're giving the city $5,000 to help with buying masks and buying things that we need to help with the COVID, which is great. Cleaning supplies, doing those things. So I just got notification on that. And then, as you know, I sent out that email looking at all the things that we're looking at with reopening the city and trying to work with businesses and churches and all of that aspect and pulling it together. And then we'll be pulling a comprehensive plan, and I'll be bringing it hopefully next Tuesday to all of you.
Okay, great. And I guess that speaks to one of Councilor Chandler's concerns about reopening the city. So great. Okay. All right. So the next item is to move into executive session. We need a motion and a second to do that. And then I would propose we take a short break now. The city clerk needs time to make some adjustments in the Zoom session, I believe. So I've got 7:51. Let's reconvene at 8 o'clock if that sounds okay, and then we'll do the executive session. Does that sound reasonable?
Do we have to do a motion first before the break, or are we going to do that after?
It would be preferable if we did it before, so I could go ahead and get rid of the other attendees.
Okay, sorry. Okay, then, okay. So we'd entertain a motion.
I move that we move into executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice concerning the Manitou Springs Library pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manitou Springs Home Rule Charter.
Okay.
Second.
Second, we motion second. All in favor? Show of hands. Passes. Okay, so we'll see you all at about 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just started the recording again. And let me get the best recording as well. Okay. All right.
Okay, so Judy, we're now out of executive session. Is that correct? Okay, that was our last business item for tonight. So from the regular session, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
John, I have to say that no decisions were made
Oh, okay, no decisions were made.
in executive session.
Executive session, I'm sorry, yes.
I'm sure Jeff would tell you what's right.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little soupy too. I'm sorry,
No,
Julie.
ultimately, you can give direction, and we had some direction to the attorney and some legal advice provided, but there was no formal decisions made, no formal action taken.
Okay, great. Julie?
I move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. We're adjourned. Everybody be
No,
well.
we have to have a second.
No, we don't. During the regular meeting.
I think.
Oh, we don't?
No.
Pretty sure we don't.
Anybody who wants to adjourn gets to adjourn, or is it up to the mayor?
Mayor gets to adjourn.
Oh.
You actually have a rule
Well,
for
then I
adjournment.
revoke my motion.
Oh,
Well-
wait, Jeff is saying I'm wrong.
Look, you have a rule. I don't remember what it is, but ultimately you can just adjourn the meeting as long as there's no issues.
Again, and unless anybody wants to stay and keep hashing things out, it looked like everybody was sufficiently tired. So,
Retired.
okay, well, just with the
Night,
tiny
everybody.
amount of cash, and then I will adjourn this meeting and wish you a good night. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Cheers.
Bye.